Hey guys, this is Jordan from Team J's Classroom Fun, and I'm glad to have you back here again. I'm continuing on today with my series about math rotations, so make sure you subscribe, like, and follow, and click that bell so you don't miss any future ideas. Today, we are continuing on with sharing about things you can actually do during the math rotations. So a lot of the first few things were set up on like how to set up the math rotations, how to pull your groups, how to decide who's in what group and things like that. And the last one or two have been more about what to actually do in the rotations. So for today, we're going to be talking about seat work. So this is kind of like the independent practice part time. So I'm going to be sharing with you some ideas of things kids could do. If you missed some of the past videos, here's what they're on. And if you want to, feel free to go back and check them out. First video I had, I talked about my why I switched to math rotations. Then I went to math pretests and how to create those. Then how to use those pretests to then create flexible groups. Then how I run mini lessons and the rotation process. The last video I talked about the first part of rotations, which happens to be teacher time. So I gave ideas for what you could do for that. And today we're going to talk about seat work. So for seat work, this is again meant to kind of be like the independent practice is what you kind of want to think of it as. So oftentimes I will give a paper pencil task. I'm not saying it's always paper pencil. I'm well aware it does not always have to be paper pencil. I know. And this does not mean I'm just sitting them down in front of the workbook. But what I want to do is whatever skill we're working on that day that they just worked on with me in teacher time, I want them to now have independent practice that they can do on their own. Oftentimes, practice pages from the curriculum. Like I said, I know most of us have resources. I know some schools you have to use your resource. I know some schools you have a little more flexibility, but this would be a chance too where you could be using some of those pages for their independent practice. Also a spiral review page. I created these at one of the schools I was at because I didn't really like what we had and I didn't really feel like we were reviewing and going back to things. So I'll show you those in a second. You can also do a practice page of today's skill or review skill. So again, this could be something you create, something you find on TPT. Task cards are also great, as long as they're focused on the skill you're working on a review. And then also story problems. Always can use story problems. Love story problems. So spiral review. So what I did here, and I created these here a few years ago now, I think at this point, it provides practice of the current skill, but it also spirals and provides practice repetition of old skills. This way you're constantly reviewing because as we know, kids can't just have a few exposures, right? We got to keep coming back to things to make sure we really understand it and things like that. So when I was making these pages, I had some basic fact practice at the top and these changed as the year went on. And as you can see, we had some place value review of greater than, less than, being able to draw the place value model, expanded form, and then I had word problems. So our skill that week must have been, I'm looking at this here, addition and subtraction word problems. So that was the focus at the bottom. And then the top part is meant to more be review. So again, after the kids go to me for teacher time, then they would go do this at their seats for their independent practice, their seat work time. Here's another one as well. For seat work and spiral review, you could do this a ton of different ways. I did have the kids turn it in and then I would give them feedback. And by grade them, I mean give them feedback. I didn't put like in the grade book. Here's another one that we have where they had to create a pattern at the top and then they had to tell what time it was, expanded form, and then obviously they had shapes at the bottom. So our unit was geometry and then we had some review of their past skills. This worked really well just because it gave them practice of the current thing, but then also gave them review practice too, which is important. Task cards. I love a good task card. You can make your own task cards. You can also look in my TPT store. I have tons of task cards that I've created for math, Team J's Classroom Fun. So if you need some, there's some there. You can also create your own, and there's many more out there as well. For task cards, students are filling out the recording sheet that goes along with it, and it covers that day or week skill. So here the students are working on some task cards that have to do with patterns. We are working on repeating patterns and growing patterns, and so they would solve the problem and record it on the sheet. Oftentimes with these, as you can see, there's quite a few problems. I would not expect them to get this done into a 10-minute chunk. So this would probably be one they'd work on for a day or two. So this would be a seat work activity that they maybe work on it on Monday and then maybe on Tuesday and maybe on Wednesday, and then Thursday they'd have a new activity. But you can find these for all kinds of different skills. Story problems, as I mentioned, also love story problems. These also are task cards, technically, I guess. And so for these also will typically take a few days to complete because also, that you don't want the kids just rushing through them. You want them showing their work and things like that. So for these ones here, we have some story problem task cards on elapsed time. Kids would then solve them and show their work and write their answer on the recording sheet, and then they turn it in each day. I would then check and return with feedback. That way, if there's something they need to check or something they need to go back to, maybe they made a little error somewhere, they can check that and find that. I also sometimes would do theme story problems. If it's around Halloween, we had Halloween word problems that we did. But it also can be covering the skills you're working on, elapsed time, multiplication, money, whatever it may be, or reviewing past skills. So this is another one. Again, it would probably take more than a few days, but the kids can work on this together. Here's an important reminder. With seat work, and this is really important, you want to have it right after teacher time and rotations, whichever way you rotate, clockwise, counterclockwise, whatever you do. The reason you want this is because you want the kids to be practicing their current skill with you, and then you want them to go on immediately to independent practice of that skill. Okay. It's really important that they do it with you and then they go on their own before they go to the game. Okay. This way it's fresh in their minds. With this, I know you're going to say, but if you have 4 groups, that's not, what about the last group? Here's what I recommend. Have the highest group, the kids that seem to understand things, start with seat work first. Oftentimes, not always, oftentimes they will be able to get the concept from prior knowledge or pick it up what they need from the mini lesson. Okay. So when they do seat work, they should probably be okay to go on it, and then they'll rotate through and come to you last. You do not want to start your struggling kiddos at seat work. In fact, I always do my struggling kiddos first, and then they immediately move on to seat work. This way, if I need a little more time with them, I have it. So again, make sure seat works right after, and I would always have the group that seems to understand things start there. And then that way everyone else can go right after teacher time. Okay. Okay, so next time I'm going to combine 2 because tech time's a pretty quick one. We're going to be talking about the last 2 parts of rotation, which would be games and activity and technology. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to leave them in the comments. Like I said, make sure you subscribe, like, and click that bell so you don't miss when I have my next video. And you can also see me over on Instagram at teamjclassroomfun. Hope you have a great day. Talk to you later.